Welcome to the project management course updated based on the PMBOK guide. This is version 7, part 7. Today we have our first traditionally open format class where we'll discuss what project management is in general. So let's get started. Why would anyone want to learn project management? Those who know how to manage projects are more than just operations managers. They bring maximum value to the company and are well compensated. Well, it's basically important for any activity. Take HR activities, marketing, sales, project management, things that allow you to build, change, or implement something. People who know how to not just maintain the status quo but improve things are always more valued. This applies to any profession, no matter who you work with. That's why it's important. That's the course project site at the end. And if there's anyone we haven't met, let's get acquainted. My name is Mike Pritula. I've worked in various positions at different companies, but today we're focusing on project work, so I'll talk about that. I first encountered project work at Alpha Bank. Since I was responsible for recruiting and staffing one of the bank's divisions, I was included in a project, probably at my supervisor's initiative, as a project participant, and I started receiving a lot of correspondence from the project manager. It happened like this. I was told, "You'll be participating in the project, you agree, right?" Of course, I totally agreed. And then suddenly I started getting emails. Some very important letters, which I really liked. We had a project manager, a woman, and she wrote so well, it was so interesting and engaging. Then I started getting involved in various activities. We need to make a list of people subject to layoffs. Please do this, and so on and so forth. I became actively involved in this project, being responsible for personnel. It was a project to centralize the operations center. We needed to extract the operational units from all bank branches in different cities and consolidate them in one location, even a new one. I was responsible for downsizing employees who were left without positions. We had to find new roles for them, communicate with them, gather their preferences and resumes, offer them vacancies, and propose them for positions. And we had to coordinate employees in the new division. It was a new city for the bank. We had very few people there. It involved building the employer brand as well. I was actively involved in all of this. Later, I participated in less formal project activities at STB TV channel because we had to build a lot of things and I had to justify, lead, and communicate, and so on. And again, I got back into project activities, this time more formally. I immersed myself in gaming. The team lacked staff in the centers of expertise who could build things. I had the expertise, but I came in as an HR business partner. And my task was quite different. So it was decided to organize a set of projects. Each HR business partner chose a couple of projects. We had a brief introductory training on project activities and worked within the project framework. We used Confluence as a system for communication and work, and implemented projects. In other companies too, I was involved in project activities, but less formally. By the way, this question of formality level, the new PMBOK version 7, it made changes, making the process less formal and more adaptive, more flexible. That's why we've updated this course. We had it recorded based on the previous version, the 6th version, but since a new version came out with new principles and interesting ideas, although they've generally existed for a long time, they are, let's say, new for project activities. We're updating this course now, and in each session we'll consider the impact of new approaches on the classical canons of project management. That's the backstory. The work relies on best practices, a list of companies I follow, and I'd appreciate if you could write about yourself, your job title, and whether you're a project manager of something. Because project manager can be a job title or just a role. For example, I was a business partner, but I was the project manager for 2 projects. But on the other hand, some people have a job title that's actually project manager. For instance, at STB TV channel, we had several project managers who specifically led projects, although they might not be called exactly project managers. For example, at STB TV channel, we had a position called Business Optimization Manager. It's like a project manager with business analyst functions. All right, So there's the first option, PMO, or either project manager or project management office. VR, so the gist is clear, the position might not be completely clear, but the general direction is understood. Yes, anyone else who can or wants to, please write your position in the chat, it's very interesting. In this course, we have 10 classes, 10 homework assignments. Completing the homework assignments allows you to receive a diploma as proof that you've mastered the material. I check the homework and provide feedback. In fact, through the homework assignments, we go through the main stages of project activities. In the homework assignments, we actually go through the main stages of project activities. We look at document templates, do some planning, fill out forms, prepare materials, and learn how to apply everything. We're also learning new PMB principles in parallel. Our diploma is issued on an online platform, the same one where project managers receive certificates if they pass the official exam, and many other people in various professions as well. So we're using a progressive methodology in this regard. Google and Harvard also issue diplomas there. It's the Accreditable platform. The course itself consists of 10 sessions, starting today with an introduction, beginning with project creation, and ending with project completion. Additionally, each lesson includes a review of relevant PMB principles and domains for that project stage based on the recently released PMB. So we look at how this applies, what we need to know about modern project management from a new perspective. Essentially, what is PMB? It's actually a nice way of combining project management and methodology as they run parallel and may even compete. This is the kind of rebranding that's happened to project management. It incorporates many useful principles from the agile world, especially adaptability, as we'll see today. I think it's good that they're converging. I believe both agile and project management will benefit from borrowing from each other. Relevance. Why it's relevant to engage in projects. Successful organizations create projects that deliver desired results on time and with stretched resources. Companies are increasingly looking for people who can succeed in this project-oriented environment. If you look at job postings, many companies may not explicitly state they're looking for someone who knows project management, but the requirements or expected results often mention implementing, creating, building, developing something, and so on. In essence, it's referring to project management. What a project is and what it isn't. Every day we have many tasks at work, but which of these can be considered a project? A project is considered a temporary activity, definitely not repetitive. If you repeat something over and over again, it's not a project. It's still a temporary activity, but it can be repeated for other tasks. There can be several similar projects that start from scratch, for example, like building houses. If your company builds private homes, each house is a project. You might build 1,000 of them, they're repetitive, but each one is a project. Interestingly, a recruiter's activity is also very similar to a project. Because there's an end result, a finite deadline, and resources involved. It's useful for recruiters to view their work as a project, albeit a simplified one. So a project is a temporary activity performed to produce a unique product, service, or result. There should be something tangible as an output. This is another useful concept for many positions. In my work, I often thought about how I benefit the company, but rarely about what results I create. The only times I had to think about my results were during performance reviews at work, starting from my time at Alpha Bank. For example, at the end of the year, you're given a questionnaire asking you to list your achievements, and you sit there thinking about what you've accomplished. Or you ask your manager how to earn more money, saying you'd like a raise, and the manager tells you to write down your achievements. Or when you're updating your LinkedIn profile or preparing your resume, you think, well, what should I write down? Or during a job interview, they ask what you've achieved. There are moments when we think about this, but we don't always consider them as projects we've completed. I once took a training course in product management for product managers. It was at Wargaming. There, I delved deeper into the concept of product management, which is also close to project management. Let's say that project management is part of the product management process. It made me look at my work differently, as a set of products I've created. It helped me a lot because I started looking at future activities in terms of what products I could create. So if you're involved in project activities, think of what you're creating as products that come into existence because of you. What does a project consist of? A specific scope. These are the desired results or products that the project encompasses. But it's equally important to define what is not included in the project. Because when someone announces a project activity, a huge number of expectations can form, which are not always justified. Therefore, a good project manager writes down what is included in the project scope and what is not, to clearly differentiate these things. The schedule is an important project attribute, with set start and end dates for the project work, and inside it are detailed milestones, project milestones, and the specific tasks that are being accomplished when they are accomplished, often along with a mapping of the relationship, followed by, and what is being done, for example, in parallel. Well, it's going to turn into a Gantt chart. And the necessary resources. That is, the people, funds, and other resources that are needed to implement the project. These are the three main elements of the project. What's important? The only reason for the project's existence is to produce the results that are specified in the scope. In the Osprey, the project end date is an essential part of determining what constitutes successful completion. The desired result must be delivered by a specific time to meet the perceived need. And it's important because the date affects the scope of the project, the relevance of the project. Because if something is not done within the promised time frame, its relevance can diminish and even turn to zero. There is such a phrase, an expensive spoon to lunch. Why do you need a spoon if you've already had lunch? If you order soup at a restaurant, you need a spoon before you start eating it. Once you've eaten it, you don't need a spoon anymore. Well, the availability of resources determines the nature of the products that the project can produce. You may have some really cool ideas, and may even have the desire to realize them. But if resources aren't available to you, then unfortunately there's a lot you can do. For example, many companies say, it would be great to automate this or that process. Make an HR system your HR system. You can save a lot of money by not having to buy from developers. Let's make our own. Ideas can be cool. Yeah, cool. It makes sense. Scope of application, automate such and such set of processes in the main 5 HR processes. But the resources to do this are very limited. I mean, I don't know, $1,000 a month. And that's when our scope of the project, it narrows down a lot. For $1,000 a month, you won't do anything. Almost nothing. The chat room would be a good one to make. What isn't the project? That's just like understanding what a project is. It's important to understand what a project is not. Then there won't be such confusion. So there is, except the project is not a project. What is a process? It is a series of routine steps to perform a specific function, such as a procurement process or budget process. A process is not a one-time activity that achieves a specific result, but rather it defines how a specific function should be performed each time over and over again. Processes, like the actions involved in procuring materials, are often part of the project. A program is not a project either. Can be a set of goals that lead to specific projects. But unlike a project, a program can never be fully implemented. For example, a departmental awareness program, and health can never fully achieve its goal. The public will never be fully aware of all health issues as a result of an awareness program, but one or more projects may achieve specific outcomes related to the program's goal. For example, a workshop on minimizing the risk of heart disease. Projects can be big and small, meaning they can be for a few years or a few days. Involving many people or just you personally as a project manager can be formal and informal. I talked about the fact that I have done a lot of informal projects in my work. That is, I didn't lead them as projects. I could apply some tools of project activity, for example, a business case or a project charter. Well, maybe not even in full, but a shortened version. Could have applied the project schedule again, simplified options, and so on. What's interesting is that they can be both business and personal. If you decide, by the way, I have a friend, my former colleague at Alpha Bank, who is a project manager and ran a project office. He was building himself a house. He is clearly as a project manager. It is clear that it is easier for a project manager to build a house for himself because he sees it all as a project. The 4 stages of the project. Classic. A project has a life cycle that describes the set of phases it goes through from inception to completion. A phase is essentially a grouped set of activities that are logically related to each other that culminate in one or more project deliverables. For small projects, just 4 phases can take several days to complete. Now, one by one, these phases. At the start of the project, this phase involves the formation, assessment, and articulation of the business need for the project. It's very important that we do a project when we realize it's really needed. and the overall approach to its execution, as well as agreeing on the preparation of a detailed project plan. That is, the project plan is born later. The outcome of this phase may be approval to move to the next phase, documentation of the need for the project, and a rough estimate of time and resource, something that is then incorporated into the project charter, plus an initial list of people who may be interested in being involved or affected by the projects, and so-called stakeholders. Let's move on. Organization and preparation. This is stage 2. This step involves developing a plan that specifies the desired outcomes, the work to be accomplished, time, cost, and other resources, and a plan to address the major risks of the project. The output of this phase may be a project plan that documents the intended project deliverables and the time, resources, and supporting processes needed to create them. So the project plan is not prepared in the first stage, but in the second stage, yes. Well, because the project might not get management support. Why detail exactly what you'll do, how, in what time frame, which people will be involved, what budget, and so on? For this, it's enough to just prepare a business case, a business justification. Project execution is basically the main stage. This is where everything we planned happens. Accordingly, this phase includes forming the project team, setting up the project support system, doing all the work, monitoring, controlling, and executing to stick to the plans. That is, planning alone is not enough. You also need to execute and monitor. Outputs from this phase may include project deliverables, progress reports, and other communications. In general, there are many templates for project activities, from 50 to the most popular ones. And if you look for even more specific, nuanced ones, there'll be even more. This doesn't mean they all have to be used. Again, even PMBOK, which aims to standardize methodology, says that documentation is not the most important thing. So in this course, we'll focus on what we might call the most critical and important documents needed for a project manager's work. And finally, project closure. This stage involves evaluating the project results, because we need to make sure we achieved what we wanted. Getting customer approval, transitioning team members to new responsibilities or new projects, closing financial reports, and conducting a post-project evaluation to see what lessons we can learn from the project. The outputs of this phase may include final, accepted, and approved project deliverables, as well as recommendations and suggestions for applying the lessons learned to similar projects in the future. What is project management? Or project management? It's the process of guiding a project from the first phase to the final phase. That is, it's the management of this activity. Project management includes 5 groups of processes. These processes essentially mirror the phases. The only difference is that the monitoring and control process is not a phase itself, but allows monitoring and controlling how projects are implemented. In all other respects, the processes and phases can be said to be synchronized. That is, initiating processes, planning processes, executing processes, and closing processes are even similar in name. What it takes for a project to succeed. Not all projects are successful. Just wishing to implement a project is not enough. I think if you've been involved in any significant activity like trying to build a house or something important like that, you know that desire alone is not enough. Information, communication, and commitment are important. What is information? Accurate, timely, and complete data for planning, performance monitoring, and final project evaluation. This is where the documents being prepared are important. Communication is how information is exchanged, both among the project participants themselves and among all involved stakeholders. And commitment is important so that people are ready to do what they promised. Because if you've assembled a project team, typically these are people who already work somewhere in the company and are participating in the project additionally. Although there are times when people transition fully into a project, but that's rather rare. These are some very large-scale projects where people are released from their current duties to work full-time on the project. When they're not released, they're still somewhere else. It's very important that, having stated they're involved in the project and willing to do something, that they actually do it. Because they will inevitably have a conflict between their current activities and project activities. between a supervisor who seemed okay with project participation and the project manager. This is inevitable and should be taken into account. Initiation processes. Now about the processes. Any project starts with an idea or a need. This can sometimes be informal. In smaller projects, this might be a verbal discussion or agreement. The two main questions here are, should we do this? Because not all projects are worth doing and implementing, as the benefit may be either insignificant or disproportionate to the costs. I mean, I've seen such projects in companies where a company started a project and in the end it grew and resulted in something that didn't exceed the resources spent. And the second important question, can we do this? Because sometimes there are no possibilities. There's a lack of financial capabilities, technological capabilities, personnel, or whatever external capabilities. Sometimes you need to wait for opportunities to arise. Let's move on. Planning processes describe how the project will be implemented. An overview of the project reasons, a detailed description of the intended outcomes, a list of all constraints the project must address, all assumptions. This is usually all documented. All necessary work, this will basically be the project plan. Role allocation, detailed schedule, timeline, deadlines, staffing and other resource needs, description of how we'll manage risks, communication plan, and project quality assurance plan. There may be a broader list of tasks, but these are the main ones. The execution process, preparation and execution itself. Preparation is assigning people to all project roles, meaning these people need to be selected, discussed, and roles distributed. There's a lot about team dynamics here. What I liked about PMBOK is that it pays more attention. I would say PMBOK for me. It focuses more on the manager's soft skills rather than hard skills. Because very often project management was heavily focused on processes and documents, overlooking team dynamics. It was taught but wasn't a priority. There's a team dynamic aspect there, because project team members still need to learn to work together effectively, for example. Let's explain the tasks to all team members. Determining how the team will perform its core functions, setting up necessary tracking systems, and announcing the project within the organization. This is also a very important part that precedes effective change management implementation. Project execution involves completing tasks, ensuring quality, and again, team management. The ability to conduct effective one-on-ones, motivate people, solve their problems, and remove obstacles. Team development is important, especially for longer-term projects. And information sharing, monitoring and control processes, comparing performance against plans, troubleshooting problems that arise, and keeping everyone informed of what's happening. And closing processes, getting client approval, resolving all issues, helping team members transition to their next roles, conducting evaluations, and a retrospective to learn lessons. The project manager's role in all of this, it's considered challenging, really challenging. When any of you have had to get something from people who don't report to you, you know how difficult it is. In project activities, your project may have all the documents. Maybe there's an order from the CEO assigning the project team and requiring them to follow the schedule. But still, it's not the same as being a direct supervisor. Sometimes you have to manage technical staff who don't always know how to work together. There's no direct authority over people. You can't hire or fire. You can choose your project or not, but you're choosing from those already in the company. You can't hire from the outside market whoever you want. Unless you're building a full project staff from scratch, you can't fire people. You can complain about an employee to their supervisor or remove them from the project, but you'll have to bring in someone else. There are people who will oppose the project. The project can become a thorn in someone's side, get in someone's way, and people will try to hinder it. Not everyone wants to follow the rigid rules of project management, but fortunately it emphasizes that principles are more important than strict rules. Let's move on. Lights. Seek information based on what you know you need. Follow the plan because you believe it's the best approach. Involve people you know are important to the project. Identify problems and risks, analyze them, and get support to address them. Share information with people you think should receive it. Put all important information in writing, ask questions, allow others to do the same, and strive for your project's success. Major challenges at work. The tendency for everyone to skip the planning stage and jump straight into execution. This can be very problematic, especially if you haven't clearly defined the project scope. People will keep adding to it. So your project can grow into some kind of monster, a mega project into which everyone has stuffed their expectations. That's why in project management, it's very important to say no in time to people who say, can we add something else there? Project members participating in new projects and tasks, different team members who don't know each other. This is what you'll have to work with when assembling a team from different employees across the organization. How PMBOK 7 differs from PMBOK. In general, what is PMBOK? Project Management Body of Knowledge. A compilation of knowledge about project management. It doesn't just exist in project management, there's HR too, though I don't know if anyone writes HR knowledge. The same goes for finance professionals. Many professions have their own. It's essentially a description of what you need to know. The previous 6th edition contained management guidelines and standards, plus appendices, glossary, and index. In the 7th edition, they slightly rearranged it, management standard first, then guidelines. And the content has changed. What's important in the new version? Principles and domains have been introduced which need to be explored. What are they called? Here are their names: stewardship, responsible leadership. Be proactive, be aware of the consequences of your actions, care for and support the team. Be honest with clients. In this course, we'll examine in detail what's included here. Which theories, approaches, and actions help achieve this? The second is team or teams. Create an environment of collaboration and respectful demand for results within the team. Stakeholders. Strive to understand stakeholders' interests and expectations. Involve them in the value creation process. Value. By the way, these principles are similar to the Agile Manifesto. There are many similarities if you compare them one-to-one. Value. Focus on maximizing value for the customer and organization. Exactly. Holistic picture. Think systemically. View the project as an element of a larger system. Consider interconnections. Leadership. Encourage leadership at all levels. Teach and mentor to inspire team members. Process tailoring. Adapt the project management system to the specific situation. Choose approaches and tools to maximize value. So essentially, this point is saying, okay, yes, project management can sometimes be too complex, too much. You don't need to follow all the rules rigidly. Take what's most important and useful. The main thing is to provide maximum value to the customer. That's how the Agile Manifesto once said that documentation should be just enough. It doesn't need to be exhaustive. The outcome is more important than the documentation. Here we see the same principle being declared. Build quality into the product development process and consider the project's complexity. Account for complexity at every stage and reduce it using your expertise. Again, project management itself was quite complex, but now we're being asked to simplify it. Threats and opportunities. Minimize threats, maximize opportunities, be adaptable and resilient, act according to the situation while staying focused on creating value. Again, from Agile, the modern world is becoming more complex. The longer the project, the harder it is to implement as originally planned, because new situations and circumstances arise that need to be addressed. Change management, be prepared for changes, manage them. These are the principles and domains involved: stakeholder, team, lifecycle, planning, project work, delivery, measurement, and uncertainty. Or in other words, stakeholders. This includes aligning and engaging project participants, focusing on the external need for the project. Team. An important point is creating a shared environment and establishing a culture. It's crucial for a project manager to be able to manage the team well. That means also being an excellent people manager. The project lifecycle is about understanding how the set of project phases works. Planning involves organizing work throughout the project, controlling and refining. Project work is about organizing processes in their direct implementation. Performance evaluation, meeting requirements, expectations and criteria, translating project development and values. This means creating project value for the market and dealing with uncertainty and risks, assessing threats and opportunities. How does it work? Yes, there's an external and internal environment. There's a value system. where the principles of the management model and 8 knowledge areas shape how project management works. And if you look at the content of version 6 and 7, firstly, as I said, they swapped some things around. Secondly, there are many connections between the old and new sections. There are some new things that have appeared. Let's continue. Practical application of project management principles. The first main idea, project management, focuses on what we're doing for the target audience, who are willing to vote with their dollars for our project, directly or indirectly. And the second main idea is understanding that projects are now created in rapidly changing market conditions. That's why project and team flexibility is important. These are the two major innovations, the two major trends in project management that have changed approaches. So the focus is on the needs of the target audience we're doing this for, and they're used to it. And the second is the changing environment. Basically, for those familiar with Agile, it's the same thing. The two main principles: the role of project management or project manager, adaptability and flexibility, emphasizing the project manager's ability to adapt to changing conditions and flexibly apply various project management methodologies. Project managers used to be like locomotives, even when creating the project charter, often pushing through their vision and imposing it on those affected. And then, having approved the project charter, they'd charge ahead like a locomotive, regardless of what was happening, determined to implement it no matter what. The new role of the project manager is different now. Now please consider changing conditions and people. Next, leadership and teamwork. It's really about motivating people. Project managers used to try to use carrots and sticks. They'd talk about how great it was to be involved in the project, get people involved, make them commit, give them tasks, then say, "You said you'd do it, so do it. Do it and you'll get a carrot. Don't do it and I'll tell everyone you're not doing your job." I mean, some, I won't say all project managers, but experienced ones, understood that this approach wouldn't work. Some project managers tried to get their way with the project team through reminders, control, and threats. The modern approach is to be a leader first and foremost. Be a coach, know how to motivate, understand motivation theories, know team dynamics, learn situational leadership theories, and so on. Systems thinking, the ability to see a project in the context of the broader business system. It's a business perspective. So a modern project manager is not just a profession, but also a role. You can fulfill this role in any position. It's about understanding the whole business and how a project fits into and affects the business. Responsibility and ethics. This is something that has always existed. It's now very popular in every profession. Ethics are given special attention. So in the new principles, project managers' attention is also drawn to the ethics of their activities. Value orientation means focusing on creating value for stakeholders. It's understanding that stakeholders aren't just the CEO or some top manager, but people. It's about thinking of employees as your clients, who you're essentially working for. Change management is the willingness and ability to manage changes in a project. It's the ability to adapt the project. Essentially, it's the ability to rewrite the project plan, revise deliverables and timelines, possibly adjust resources and be okay with that. That is, to be ready to change on the fly. That's why, regarding the sixth principle in the new role of management and manager, that's why new project management isn't about an abundance of various documents, because if you create a bunch of documents, you're not very flexible anymore. By the way, everything needs to be rewritten. And if you're using minimal documentation, it's important. Rather, you rely on principles, apply tools, then it's easy for you to replan everything. Now, many classic project management tools are being replaced by good tools like Notion, where you can create a project charter page, a project plan, design a project schedule, then quickly redo everything. Stakeholder focus. The ability to effectively interact with stakeholders, understanding their needs and expectations. I would correlate this new trend in the manager's job with developed emotional intelligence, because how are you going to understand your stakeholders without showing empathy? It's a skill with logic. Many project managers I've worked with or observed, they are very analytical, very logical, systems thinking, numbers, deadlines, and so on. But here, for this change in PMB, empathy is needed, emotions are needed, emotional intelligence, and continuous learning and development. It's about constant self-improvement and learning to adapt to new trends and practices in project management. Openness to what is changing, that is, PMB says, friends, this change is not the last. There will be more changes and they'll probably be more frequent. So be prepared and absorb everything new. Well, this is how the role of the project manager is changing in light of the emergence of new principles and new approaches. The PMB book has been translated into many languages. I've seen it in Russian, in Ukrainian. Surely Polish and other language versions exist too. So for those interested, it's finally become more or less normal to read, because it used to be quite complicated. Everyone acknowledges that it's bigger, friendlier, so to speak. Homework. Answer questions in up to one paragraph about reflection. In the role of project manager, think about where you are now and consider at the same time why these questions are being asked and how you need to be in the context of the new principles. What's next? Next, we'll go through the main stages, starting with project creation. And in parallel, we'll implement the project management principles from PM Book 7 in each lesson. That is, if you look at the syllabus, at the end of each class, there's a discussion of either some relevant domain or principles, and again, PMB. We'll be addressing that. That's all for today. Thank you all for participating. I invite you to take this course. Master a vital skill for yourself. It's important for every manager too. That is, every manager is expected in principle by default to be able to implement, develop, change, and so on. And for every professional who doesn't want to just do the same thing day in and day out, who is interested in developing something meaningful. And of course, it's useful for those people who want to become project managers or positions that somehow reflect a manager role. Oh, these business analyst guys, they go hand in hand with project management. So if you're in these positions, it's also beneficial for you to go through this. Well, this course, taking PMB into account, is more humane than classic project management courses, more understandable and more people-oriented. Those are my closing words. Thanks to everyone who was online. I'm looking forward to the course. Come, we'll learn together to master new knowledge in the field of management. Bye-bye. See you soon. Yes, thank you too.